Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, how should the Phillies rework their lineup? And they indeed do have Trea Turner bat leadoff more this year. We'll discuss on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk radio space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic for 5 years now, talking Philadelphia sports in all forms. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons, and this is my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing if you're consuming this in podcast form. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel if you're checking us out on YouTube. Subscribing gets you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's free. It's easy. So you catch up with everything. You never miss anything. And it's also a great way to help us out here on Locked On Phillies. It's a great way to support the content. So appreciate everyone who's done that and everyone who's going to do that. And one thing real quick before we jump into the episode, if you're a Facebook person, you're not on like X or Instagram or whatever, we now have a Locked On Phillies Facebook page. It's literally just that, Locked On Phillies, but I'll be posting links to episodes and everything, just like I use the Twitter account now or the X account now. So if you're on Facebook, follow Locked On Phillies on Facebook and be happy to help you keep up with what's going on with the Phils that way. So in today's episode, we're going to start with a look at how the Phillies could possibly rework their lineup. If Trea Turner does indeed spend more time in the leadoff hole, what does that do to the rest of the lineup? We're also going to look at something that just popped into my mind today. In the past, the defensive prowess of the Philadelphia Phillies has been in question. Is that still a question? Because I've heard so much about the offense, we haven't really had a conversation about the defense of the team. And finally, we've got some MLB news at the end that we're going to turn into an off-the-poll question about the ABS system, the automatic balls and strikes system that MLB seems to be ready to implement in some form. They're using it in spring training. So we'll talk about all of that. But let's start with this lineup question because this is very interesting, right? We've talked already about whether or not Trea Turner could be the leadoff option over Kyle Schwarber this year. That conversation point is gaining more and more momentum as we get deeper into the early part of spring training. Now, there's a lot more time to go. We'll see them try stuff in spring training games. We'll see them try stuff in regular season games. We're not going to get the true answer to this for a while because the lineup that the Phillies have on opening day is most likely going to be tinkered with a good amount throughout the course of a 162-game regular season, maybe even in the playoffs. So we'll see how long it takes them to nail down exactly how they want to do this. But let's live in a world where Trea Turner is going to bat leadoff, right? Because if Kyle Schwarber bats leadoff, we know how this works. Schwarber leads, Turner bats second, Harper third, either Castellanos or Bohm fourth. Like, we know the structure of the lineup because that's what it's been for the Phillies for a while now. But if you switch Turner up to first, that changes a lot of things. It changes the handedness splits that you like to see in modern baseball with the rule that relief pitchers have to face at least 3 batters. Well, now you don't want to go like lefty-lefty. You want to alternate guys to make it tougher for those relievers to have a handedness advantage against all the guys you face. So it's not as simple as just saying, well, Turner bats first and then flip him and Schwarber because Kyle Schwarber just doesn't feel like a 2-hole hitter, and that's not a big enough change to the lineup if you're just moving Turner up to drop Schwarber a spot. If you're going to do it, no half measures here. So what should the lineup be? Well, we know Turner's batting first. There's been talk if Turner bats leadoff, Bryce Harper may move up from 3 to the 2-hole, which I don't love. I would prefer Bryce Harper in the 3-hole because I still live by the notion that your 3-hole hitter is your best overall hitter. I think more often than not in the most important parts of the game, which 7th, 8th, 9th inning, you're going to get into situations where that 3-hole spot is up with runners on base or up in big spots. And it just seems to always fall that way. It's the way kind of baseball has been done for hundreds of years, which doesn't make it right. There are plenty of things in baseball that have gone to the wayside recently that have been the way things have always been done. Sometimes those innovations are helpful, sometimes they're not. But long story short, I would like Bryce Harper to still be at the 3-hole spot, but I would imagine the Philadelphia Phillies would be keen to move him up because whoever you bat in the 2-hole is going to create a back-to-back of either lefty-lefty in the 2-3 or righty-righty in the 1-2. So let's do it this way. Let's have Trea Turner bat leadoff. That way, Bryce Harper batting second means you go righty-lefty to start. And then you get into an interesting spot, because part of what my proclivity to have Kyle Schwarber in a different spot in the lineup would be is to have him bat behind Bryce Harper to make Harper more make you unable to pitch around him more. Not that Castellanos did a bad job of that at points last year. I think Kyle Schwarber brings that added whole power idea of it, where it's just like a mistake is not just a single or a double, it's a bomb, and like a bomb, like 450 to right field at Citizens Bank Park type of nuke shot. And like that intrigues me. So I think the Phillies are going to try to split up handedness and have it be like Harper, then Castellanos in the 3-hole, or maybe Bowman in the 3-hole, and then Schwarber will bat cleanup. If it was me, and I'm going to try and give you both what I think the Phillies would do and what I would do, I would have it be Turner, 1. Second, I would have either Castellanos or Bowman. Take your pick. Those guys kind of feel interchangeable to me at this point. But let's just call it Castellanos because he's a more veteran player. So Turner 1, Castellanos 2, Harper 3, Schwarber 4. That way you get the protection for Harper. Or if you want to have Harper in the 2-hole, Schwarber 3, and then you could put Castellanos in the cleanup spot. I don't think Alec Boehm is a cleanup spot hitter. He's shown that in big moments in the regular season, like he comes through clutch. But when you need that power out of the 4-hole spot, I don't know that he creates that. There's no wrong answer to this, but there also is no real right answer to this either. It's kind of this whole philosophy conversation. But that would be my top 4. And then 5 is always tricky for the Phillies because you don't have another lefty bat that really seems to fit there. You may have to go righty in that spot in general if you're going to go righty cleanup hitter. So, you know what? Let's do this. Let's have, this is my lineup now. Turner bat leadoff, Castellanos bat second, Harper bat third, Schwarber bat cleanup. Then you can go a righty there, and I'll have Bohm in the 5-hole. 6 will be Stott. 7 will be JT Realmuto. 8 would be Marsh. And then 9 would be Max Kepler. And you have lefty, then into the righty at the top of the lineup with Trea Turner, right? We know that Marsh and Kepler are going to be the bottom 2, or Rojas and Kepler are going to be the bottom 2 in the lineup. Like that seems to make way more sense, unless you wanted to drop JT Realmuto down at some point so that you could see some better pitches lower down in the order. But Marsh's performance last year is not indicative of a higher spot in the lineup, and Kepler's performance over the course of his career says he's more of this like pop guy, kind of like think back to like what Michael Franco was that one year when he was in the 8-hole and was like one of the most productive 8-hole hitters as far as power in like 100 years. And that was only for like a period of, I don't know, a couple weeks or a month. There was a point where he was red hot out of the 8-hole spot and just hitting bombs left and right. Like I think that could be a Kepler type of role on this team. But you see how it gets complicated when you move around what you're doing at the top of the order. It also opens up a lot of interesting possibilities. There's 2 ways to look at everything. You can have the positive spin and you could have the negative spin, the optimism or the pessimism. The pessimism is, man, it makes it more difficult to get the handedness correct. And you're moving guys in different spots. I know Harper likes to bat 3. I know Schwarber feels comfortable batting leadoff. And now you're taking that away from those guys to try something new. That's the pessimist side. The optimist side is, well, look at all the opportunities it opens up for guys. Like, could Trea Turner bat 300 out of the leadoff spot and steal a bunch of bases and be on and create havoc on the base paths? And could Schwarber in a 4-hole type of position create more RBI opportunities because he'd have more guys on base when he hits those home runs early in the game? Like, I don't know. There is no right answer at this point because all of this is conjecture. But my lineup, if I was switching things, again, would be Turner, Castellanos, Harper, Schwarber, Bohm, Stott, JT, then it would be Marsh, Kepler. That's what I'd be looking at. Those would be the guys that I have in that order in the lineup for the Philadelphia Phillies if we were switching around. Now, I would expect that the leadoff thing is not going to be an everyday thing, right? But it sounds more and more like what they're going to try to do. So maybe they do just from jump, game 1 of 162 down in Washington, is Trea Turner taking the first at bat for the Philadelphia Phillies this year. They could. Spring training will give us a lot of looks, and we have the first spring training game coming up on Saturday. We won't find out there because not all the starters are going to be playing, but come, I don't know, mid-March, like March 15th-ish, that time frame, that's when we're going to start to see these full lineups of the major league guys. And that will give us a good indicator of what they're planning to do in the actual season. So we'll know before opening day, I think, how much percentage of the time they're going to be using Trea Turner in the leadoff spot. But it creates an interesting, I don't want to call it a problem, but it creates an interesting, we'll look at it the positive way, opportunity for the Phillies to rework this lineup in multiple spots where you might say, okay, could it benefit Schwarber? Could it benefit Castellanos from getting up earlier in the lineup? I don't know. I kind of like the further down he hits, the better. Not because he's a bad hitter, but because it puts less pressure on him to be aggressive. Like, you can't be as selective when you haven't seen the guy's stuff as much, like when you haven't had as much communication from your teammates. So that's kind of why I'm iffy on Castellanos batting second. I don't know. The Phillies have like a couple of guys that really overlap on the same type of hitter that they are, and it makes it complicated. But the type of hitter those guys are, guys like Castellanos and Bohm and JT, are good types of hitters. So productivity is going to be important in every spot in the lineup. That's how you're going to be great. That's how you're going to beat teams like the Dodgers or the Yankees if it comes to that in the World Series. You got plenty of time to figure it out. I just want to run through some thought process on what the Philadelphia Phillies reworked lineup could be. I think the Phillies proposed lineup is going to be Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Schwarber, Bohm. Then it'll be Stott, JT, Marsh, Kepler. And you'll still get the lefty at the end there because Marsh and Kepler are both left-handed. But, or maybe it's Rojas, Kepler, whatever you want to figure that out to be, if you want the handedness or the defense on any given day. But it'll be interesting to see how they rework this. And this is going to be something that Rob Thompson tinkers with. And he has not been incredible at figuring out lineup adjustments. That's been one of his weak spots, in my opinion, as Phillies manager. I don't think he's on the hot seat. And if you want a further breakdown of that, go listen to yesterday's episode where I broke down the whole case for why he's not on the hot seat, Rob Thompson. But I do think that bullpen management and lineup management have been two of his weak spots. And that's something that we'll see if he can improve upon this year in both facets. So something to keep an eye on as the Phillies get ready to play their first spring training game in just 2 days. Coming up next, we haven't really talked about the defensive side of this baseball team. And that's important, especially with the pitching staff that you have. You're going to want solid defense behind them because you could be elite in preventing runs if you just do a serviceable job defensively. So we're going to go around the positions and we're going to see where everybody stacks up defensively when it comes to Philadelphia Phillies baseball in 2025. We'll discuss that coming up as we continue today's episode. But I want to tell you about Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful might be an understatement. These are amazing. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells version because I don't want to have to go through the trouble of like cracking every pistachio. Like when I ever get any type of nuts, like I don't like the shells. And Wonderful Pistachios makes it so easy because they give you that no shells option. Or if you like the idea of cracking them open yourself, it makes you feel more immersed in the process of eating the Wonderful Pistachios, they got those too. They got everything. They're super easy to find. I was shopping at Target the other day, and they have them right there on the end of like multiple aisles. So go and get them. They're available basically everywhere that you can get your groceries and food. Get snackin and get crackin with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Yeah, this is more of a lot of stuff that I do on the podcast, right? Is, hey, people are saying this is my reaction to it. Or this news came out. This is what I think. This one's more of a me creation. This is more of a what people aren't talking about thing. So maybe this will be interesting to some of you guys. I hope so. Defensively, how are the Philadelphia Phillies set for 2025? Because part of the game is offense and part of the game is pitching. And I think we almost take the pitching for granted when we say, okay, we're just focused on the staff being good, the bullpen being good. They're almost so dominant on the mound that we've stopped having the conversation about the Phillies defense the way that we did a year or two ago. But coming into 2025, listen, you're fighting for a World Series. The margin for error got thinner in the division. Everything's going to have to be on point. So let's look around defensively at how the Phillies stack up. I guess we'll go position by number. Pitching-wise, they got some great defensive pitchers. Don't have to worry about that at all. Zach Wheeler is a Gold Glove candidate. Ranger Suarez is a Gold Glove candidate. Aaron Nola can field his position. Christopher Sanchez can field his position. I believe Jesus Luzardo is a solid defending pitcher. I don't know off the top of my head. It's a tough thing to pick up unless you watch a lot of the games, and I didn't see a lot of his games with the Miami Marlins outside of when he pitched against the Phillies, but they're fine defensively, pitching-wise. Catcher. JT Realmuto is still a plus defender. I know he's getting older, but he is still a plus defender at the major league level. I never really worry about JT defensively back there. His offense, that's a different story. There are questions there. Defensively, he's not the guy he was in 2020, 2021, but he's still a plus defensive catcher. The Phillies are fine at that spot. Bryce Harper is a Gold Glove candidate at first base. He is an excellent defensive first baseman, and he's got another year comfortable with the position of what balls do I go after in the gap? What balls do I attack that the pitcher might get? That's stuff that only comes from experience. He's going to be exceptional. Bryson Stott, exceptional defensive second baseman. So far we've gone through 4 positions, and we're talking about Gold Glove potential at all 4 of them. That's a pretty darn good place to start. And then we get to shortstop. And a lot of people worry about Trea Turner defensively. It's a weak spot. It absolutely is. I'm not going to lie to you and say Trea Turner's the best defensive shortstop in baseball. What are you guys talking about worried about his defense? He's been rough lately. Now, I don't think he's as bad as some people look at the numbers and say he is, because shortstops get a lot of fielding opportunities. I'd say he's an average to slightly below average defensive shortstop right now in the scope of Major League Baseball. You can survive with that, but it's not ideal. One of the things that you want to focus on for Trea Turner in spring training and for this season, can he improve his defense? The offense improved last year. I think the defense is going to be a big focus of his game this year. We will see what he and infield coach Bobby Dickerson work through as far as getting him into a more consistent type of fielding routine. We'll see. It's not great, but you look around the infield and you say, okay, 2 Gold Glovers to Trea Turner's left. To his right, not a Gold Glover, but a guy in Alec Bohm, who we're going to talk about now, who has come miles and miles from the guy that he was when he first came to the major leagues. He is now an average major league third baseman, and that is leaps and bounds ahead of where he was as one of the worst defensive players at that position just a couple years ago. Last year was a huge jump by him defensively. I don't expect that to go anywhere this year. I just expect good, solid play at third base out of Alec Bohm. He's not going to make the Nolan Arenado, Manny Machado, plays into foul territory, throw guys out type of things. Those are not routine plays for him like they are for some of the elite fielders in baseball at the hot corner. But he has shown that he is serviceable. I don't really overthink anything when a ball is hit his way anymore, when in the past it was a nightmare to see a ball rolling up the third baseline. I expect him to continue to be average. I don't know if I expect another leap in his defensive ability, but he's serviceable. So you've got serviceable at third, serviceable at short, even though people think Trea Turner stinks defensively, which, okay. Gold Glove caliber at second, first, and catcher and pitcher. Pretty darn good in the infield. The outfield. Nick Castellanos is what he is. He is an average right fielder. Now, I know he had that stretch of no errors for a long time last year. He played 162 games. He was Mr. Consistency in the field and in the availability categories in 2024. Could he take a step back this year? Sure. I don't think that whole never make an error streak is going to be recreated, but I don't think he kills you, especially like a guy who kills you is like Kyle Schwarber. That's why he's DHing. Nick Castellanos is a serviceable right fielder when he's playing in the right spots and has the right guys around him, which brings us to center field, who's going to be the main guy helping Nick Castellanos out to his arm side, and that is Brandon Marsh, I think. Now, it could be Rojas, and if it's Rojas, Yohan Rojas is an all-world, elite-level center fielder that may have the best defensive instincts in baseball. He could. That is something that I would not be afraid to argue. If it's Brandon Marsh, guess what? He was a Gold Glove nominee this past year in a corner spot in left field. Now, as a center fielder, he's not a Gold Glove candidate. I don't think, at least. And I'm a big Brandon Marsh guy. I'm not saying someone's not a Gold Glove candidate is not a knock on their defensive abilities. It's just I don't think he's at the top of the heap in center field. But I do think he's an above average outfielder at every position. So, above average in center, serviceable in right, and Kepler's kind of the mixed bag, right? I think Kepler you're going to see is somewhat of a Nick Castellanos type of guy. Max Kepler is not known for his defense. He's not a plus defensive player, but he's also not a guy that's going to kill you out there. He's going to be a guy who I hope his defensive performance is very forgettable this year. That would be a good thing. What would be bad is if we get into a situation where it's like, man, this guy's become kind of a liability in left field because he's not going to hit for average, and that will draw the ire of the fan base. If you've got a guy that's hitting like 230, and even if he's creating 20-some home runs for the Philadelphia Phillies, but is also like a weak defender, that's where Max Kepler is going to start to lose this fan base. He's got to do all the little things right so that he can get away with being the power hitter that's going to strike out sometimes. But the outfield is one of those spots where you look at it and you say, okay, that's where you worry a little bit more about the defense because Kepler can have his off days. Castellanos can have his off days. Brandon Marsh is probably moving to center field to play a different position than naturally where I think he's best at, which is left field. But you got Kepler in left and you got the opening in center, and I think your offense is better with Brandon Marsh than with Johan Rojas. Again, if it's Rojas, that makes up for a lot. And also, you'll have Rojas available to be a defensive replacement late in games. You'll have him start some days when you have a tough lefty on the mound. Like, you're going to see a good amount of Johan Rojas this year. Like, who starts is almost a moot point in center field because I think there will be a pretty solid platoon effort by the Philadelphia Phillies. But as far as defense is concerned, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions that are going to be Gold Glove caliber when they're at their best. And then you have 4 positions that are going to be average when they're at their best, or maybe even slightly above average for some of those guys. And you've got no one who's like a complete liability in the field. So as far as defense is concerned, the Phillies have sneaky become a solid defensive team, and their pitching staff is so good that less is required of them. So is the defense still a question for the Phillies? I don't think it is. I hope that doesn't bite me in the rear this season, but hopefully that breakdown made you a little bit more comfortable if that was something in the back of your mind that's like, can they field the baseball? I think this Phillies team is going to show this year that they are a darn good defensive baseball team, or at least an above average defensive Major League Baseball team, which is all you need from them. Coming up next, we're going to take a quick look at an MLB rule change or a potential rule change. I'll break down what's going on with the automatic balls and strikes system, also known as robot umpires, coming up next. All right, let's talk about FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off, or maybe you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action from the start to the end of the contest. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. That's awesome. Now, I already like the odds that you get on live bets because you get a feel for the game. It's not this guess of what's going to happen before the game starts. You've got data points. You've seen the action. You can say, oh, wow, this player looks like he's getting hot. And that team, well, they're down in the game. Their odds, they're the underdogs. I might take them to cover that spread. Add that with a couple more things, you can make some big money. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app's easy to use. And when you win, you're going to get paid instantly. You don't have to wait for the end of the game for the payout, as long as your bet is something that will be settled over the course of the game. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, folks, if you're anti-umpire, and I'm pretty darn anti-umpire at points, this is probably good news for you. Major League Baseball is moving towards implementing the ABS systems that they've used in the minor leagues. Now, if you haven't seen it or you're not aware of what this is, let me give you a quick breakdown of what that is. ABS, automatic balls and strikes. I believe that's what it stands for. That's always been my assumption, but that's what it is in practice. It's a system that tracks the strike zone, and any given pitch, it's going to track whether it considers it a ball or a strike based on the strike zone, just like we see it on TV. You know how we get the little outline of the zone and the outline of the ball when the pitches come, and it lights up if it's a strike and it doesn't if it's a ball. Basically what it is, that's not going to be calling balls and strikes. There will still be an umpire back there, but there's a challenge system. So if Trea Turner's up and there's a slider low and away, and the umpire says it caught a piece of the outside corner, and Trea Turner's like, dude, no way. There's no shot that caught it. Trea Turner can just go ahead and appeal real quick, and he can say, yo, tap the helmet, I believe is the signal they'll use. That's the signal they use in the minors, because I have seen games in the minor leagues with this used. And the umpire real quick, get on the headset, it'll say ball or strike based on the system. If the player is correct, it will be overturned. If the umpire is correct, the call will be confirmed. You move on with the game. I went down and I saw the Durham Bulls play a game a couple years ago, 2 summers ago, and they had this system set up. And it was like they had a dude that I think checked like 3 or 4 times in a bat. He did it a lot throughout the game. And in totality, I think it was maybe 20 seconds worth of time. Like, they're very fast. It's short. I think that was outside blue. Check that. All right. Call is overturned. Play ball. Like, it's literally that fast, or at least it was at the minor league level. Now, major leagues, these are umpires that are probably going to be using it that aren't as familiar. The minor league umpires are used to it, but there is some crossover there, and they will be briefed on it. And right now, for Major League Baseball, that whole system is only going to be implemented in spring training, and only in like 60% of spring training games. So it's not every spring training game, and it's not going to be in the regular season, but this is going to be the trial run. Now, I don't understand why it's taken this long to get it done. I think the system works stupendously from what I've seen at the minor league level. I think it's hugely important to have checks and balances at the major league level. There's one thing that I will say. I don't want this to take the place of true umpires back there. Like, I don't want there to just not be an umpire, not be a zone, not have these different things that you have to figure out. Like, if you want to review pitches, absolutely. Should there be a limit on how many you're able to review? Yes, you can't challenge every call. There's, just like in any other sport, you get a certain number of challenges. Now, there will have to be more for baseball because there's more pitches and everything, and the process is very quick. But I like the idea of implementing this in addition to having the major league umpires, because there are certain things that you need to be behind the plate for. There are certain things that, like, guys are not going to challenge something where the zone is a certain place and the umpire just has it set there, and maybe on the TV screen, right? There are times for sure when a ball on the TV screen, on the TV broadcast, is shown as a ball. And in real time, you're like, yeah, but that was a strike. And the pitcher is like, yeah, but that's a strike. And the batter's like, yeah, but that's a strike. And sometimes the technology does not fully indicate like what the pitch appears to be, the flow of the game, the moment of the game. And I'm not saying umpires should call games differently in bigger moments, but I'm just saying, like, baseball is part of the game, is figuring out the strike zone. And I don't want to fully take that away. I don't want it to be a 100%, this is it, there's no wiggle room, because frankly, gives a major advantage to hitters in a world where I don't think they need it, because there's some pretty damn good hitters at the major league level. Like, I think baseball has got a nice balance of offense and defense right now with the banning of the shift and the bases getting bigger and all of the changes they've made. I think they're in a pretty good spot. I'd like to see it play out for a couple more years before we go saying automatic strike zone. If you have a great idea of where the zone's at, you will walk a billion times because you know down to a millimeter where it is. I don't love that. Now, would it help the Phillies, a team that gets out for chasing a lot? It very well could. I think this is actually, the Phillies would be one of the teams that benefit most from Major League Baseball going to either a review system or also a automatic system, 100% no human balls and strikes called, because then they'd have a better feel for the zone, which would reduce their chase rate in theory and would lead to them being more comfortable in taking certain pitches and not going after ones that are 50-50 balls. So a lot of me is saying, logically, get every call right, do it the right way. It's 2025. We have the technology. Why not get every call 100% correct if we have the ability to? But part of me is also saying, the game that I love, that I grew up playing, that I've watched my whole life, that has existed for hundreds of years, is based around this idea of figure out the zone. It's one of the things that the pitcher-hitter dynamic has understood for hundreds of years. So it's a tricky thing. What I do know is we'll get a look at it up close and personal in spring training. And I think it's good to at least have these checks and balances, and we'll see how far Major League Baseball takes it over in the next couple of years. But again, just in spring training, not in the regular season as of yet. We will see how the process goes, but something that'll be fun to keep an eye on over the next month or so. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Oh, I do want to do an off the poll question though around that. So I'm going to ask you, and we'll post it on Twitter and get the, or on X or whatever you call it, and get your responses on it. The poll question that we'll answer on tomorrow's episode or respond to on tomorrow's episode is, what would you prefer for Major League Baseball to do? Completely automated strike zone, leave umpires alone, don't change a thing, or the hybrid system of a review process? That's what I'm interested in seeing, where the fan base stands on that. It's not necessarily Philly specific, but as I just brought up, it could be very important to the Phillies. So I'll post that poll. We will look at the results in tomorrow's episode, but that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you again so much for joining us. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing, subscribe to the YouTube, all that great stuff that we talk about that really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.